You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
This is the biggest national security vulnerability this nation has seen since 9/11. We have to fix it.
Donald Trump's first picks for his administration are in. What they tell us about his main priorities for his second term in office. Then, destructive wildfires are burning in the east and west, fueled by rare weather conditions. Why firefighters are concerned they could only get worse. And Bitcoin's big moves, the cryptocurrency hitting new record highs by the hour. The latest on the turbocharged currency and how soon it could reach $100,000. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Nearly 1 week after Donald Trump secured a second term in the White House, he's begun selecting who will join his administration and help put his proposed policies into action. Today, looking to fulfill a commitment to tighten immigration policy, something Americans saw as a top priority. Trump tapped Stephen Miller as the new White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. Miller was a senior advisor to Trump during his first administration and a lead architect of the president-elect's plans for mass deportations of undocumented immigrants. Miller will join former ICE Director Tom Homan, who Trump announced just yesterday as his new border czar. Homan, in Trump's first term, designed and led Trump's controversial zero-tolerance family separation policy, under which children crossing the southern border into the United States without legal permission were separated from their parents so the parents could be criminally prosecuted. Trump forming this team after campaigning on a pledge to launch the biggest deportation initiative in the country's history. Homan appearing on Fox and Friends just this morning.
And as far as the people want to push back on deporting these people, what is the option? You have a right to claim asylum. You have a right to see a judge, and we make that happen. But at the end of that due process, if the judge says you must go home, then we have to take them home. And because if we're not, what the hell are we doing? If the judge's order doesn't mean anything, then shut down the immigration court, take the border patrol off the border, so there's no consequences violating the laws of this country.
Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, responded to this appointment saying she will defend Mexicans on both sides of the border, but she also plans to work with President-elect Trump to move forward in coordination. At least 2 other nominations are also in. Today, Trump picked former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin to run the EPA, placing the Long Island Republican in charge of his plans to boost energy production and curb regulations. New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, meantime, the highest-ranking woman Republican in the House, has been named as the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Both positions will have to be confirmed by the Senate. And looking ahead, this Wednesday, Republican senators will hold a secret ballot to elect their new leader to replace Mitch McConnell, choosing between Senators John Cornyn, John Thune, and Rick Scott. Whomever wins will get to decide the legislative priorities and calendar, including fast-tracking President-elect Donald Trump's nominees. The president-elect is demanding they allow him to make recess appointments, allowing him to fill positions even when the Senate is on break, to get his team in place faster. Now, recess appointments have been used in many previous administrations. Very common, although Congress has blocked Presidents Trump and Joe Biden recently from making them. In previous years, in the previous 24 years, President Barack Obama made 32 recess appointments, all to full-time positions. President George W. Bush made 171 recess appointments, 99 to full-time positions, and President Bill Clinton, he made 139 recess appointments, 95 to full-time positions. Also on Wednesday, President Joe Biden will host Donald Trump at the White House. The two of them will discuss the transition that will be coming over the next few months. One of the many items they're expected to discuss is how to handle the war in Ukraine. National correspondent Matt Gulka has more.
Fighting between Ukraine and Russia rages on. New escalations include drone strikes in Moscow and surrounding areas, and a new agreement between Russia and North Korea. with North Korean troops joining the fight on Russia's side.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
That was a vow from Donald Trump last year, and now that he's on his way back to the White House, Ukraine's support is again under the microscope. Trump has already spoken with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a call that also featured Elon Musk. The Washington Post reports Trump also spoke with Russia's Vladimir Putin, warning him not to escalate the situation. The Kremlin says the report is pure fiction.
We need to focus on our own issues first, and I've taken a lot of heat over it from Mitch McConnell, from the Wall Street Journal. Yeah. But this is what the American people spoke up and want us to do. We should never have been in Ukraine.
Trump's allies say the billions worth of aid going to Ukraine from the U.S. needs to stop. The United States has provided more than $64 billion since the start of the war in 2022. Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., shared this post on Instagram, originally posted by former Republican vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, showing Ukraine's president with the caption saying he's going to lose his allowance. The White House has about $6 billion left to spend from an April aid package approved by Congress. The administration plans to rush the remaining resources before a new regime takes control in January.
President Biden made clear when President Zelensky was here in Washington a couple of months ago that we would spend all of the resources that were provided to us by the Congress on time and in full, meaning that by January 20th, we will have sent the full amount of resources and aid to Ukraine that Congress has authorized.
What's unclear is what the strategy is for ending the war, and whether that means Ukraine would have to give up land or continue fighting Russia on its own.
And Matt, what are some of America and Ukraine's other allies saying about the pending change?
Well, we know right now France and England have both pledged to continue to support Ukraine as they try to fight off Russia. And as far as the current White House administration goes, you mentioned that meeting on Wednesday, President Biden expected to make the pitch to continue to support Ukraine when he does meet with Trump in the Oval Office later this week.
And we know you'll be covering that. Matt Gauka, thank you as always from Washington, D.C. Right now, firefighters are battling several dangerous wildfires on both coasts. A forest ranger has died in the Jennings Creek fire near the border between New Jersey and New York, fueled partly by dry conditions not seen in decades, according to officials. The fire is 20% contained and dozens of buildings are at risk. In Southern California, the mountain fire in Ventura County has destroyed over 170 buildings and injured at least 6 people. It is 36% contained, but officials are concerned high winds could make it far worse. In Indiana, 52-year-old Richard Allen has been convicted for the 2017 murders of 2 middle school girls. The 2 were found dead in the small town of Delphi after going missing during an afternoon hike 7 years ago. Prosecutors told the jury Allen confessed to killing those girls to his wife over the phone. The defense called those confessions false and said there's no solid evidence tying Allen to the crime. Richard Allen now faces up to 130 years in prison. His sentencing is scheduled for December 20th. Tuskegee University remained closed today following a shooting over the weekend that killed 1 and left 16 others injured. The victim of the shooting was not a university student, but some of those who were injured were. 25-year-old Jaquez Myrick is in custody as a suspect in the case, but right now only faces gun possession charges and has not been officially accused of shooting anyone. Police say Myrick had a handgun with a machine gun conversion device attached. Law enforcement says they expect more arrests as this investigation continues. New tonight, Wisconsin's Supreme Court heard arguments about whether a pre-Civil War era abortion ban can still be enforced. The state's first abortion ban from 1849 said anybody who killed a fetus except to save the mother's life was guilty of manslaughter. The Supreme Court's Roe versus Wade ruling in the 1970s nullified the state's ban, but lawmakers never repealed it. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade 2 years ago, pro-life advocates said Wisconsin's ban was enforceable again. 33,000 Boeing machinists are headed back to work by tomorrow after a 7-week strike, but around 17,000 workers will soon lose their jobs. The company has lost billions of dollars dealing with the strike and other issues. Boeing says most impacted employees will be notified by mid-November and have to leave the company in January. The employees who stay will get a 38% pay raise over the next 4 years. In Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee and Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti are looking to see if anyone was discriminated against by FEMA as the state recovered from Hurricane Helene. Last week, the Daily Wire reported that now fired FEMA Supervisor Marnie Washington told federal employees under her supervision to, quote, avoid homes advertising Trump in Lake Placid, Florida. And coming up, the new benefit that President Biden just announced to help improve the health of veterans. Then the big changes Red Lobster is making to try and bring in younger customers, led by a new millennial CEO. And later, how certain weapons can be detrimental to the brain health of the people who use them and the devastating impact this has had specifically on members of our military.
To all the military families, to all those with a loved one still missing or unaccounted for, to all Americans grieving the loss of a loved one who wore the uniform, Jill and I want you to know we see you, we thank you, and we'll never stop working to meet our sacred obligation to you and your families.
Today, President Biden made an appearance with Vice President Harris for the first time since the election, honoring veterans in a wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. Biden also announced expanded health care coverage for veteran cancer. And this is the first Veterans Day since the new Soldier's Journey sculpture was installed at the World War I Memorial in D.C. A National Park Service spokesperson says it represents a World War I soldier's experience from enlisting to returning home. Tonight, Israel reporting that it sees certain progress in ceasefire talks with Lebanon's Hezbollah, though the militant group says it has not received any peace proposal yet and said it was prepared to wage a long war if needed. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said that the main challenge would be preventing Hezbollah from reconstituting its military infrastructure near the border. The development came a day after Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said his country had defeated Hezbollah. In Lebanon, where Israeli military incursions have ramped up, Israel claims hundreds of Hezbollah fighters have been killed. The Lebanese Health Ministry says more than 3,000 people have been killed in total, which it believes are mostly civilians. 2024's biggest election is in our rearview mirror, but in places like Lakewood, Washington, outside of Seattle, there's still a lot at stake for local residents. In just a week, a vote is scheduled on a proposed property tax and utility rate hike that could have residents who say They're already under financial strain, shelling out a whole lot more. The National News Desk's Karina Vargas reports.
A 1% property tax increase is being proposed in the city of Lakewood. Homeowners tell me they're already having a tough time making ends meet, and this increase is just not feasible.
It's a lot. And then, you know, they expect you to keep up your house, they expect you to keep up your cars, all this kind of stuff, and you can't do that if you're paying out all this money for taxes, house taxes, just to live.
If approved, homeowners on average are estimated to pay about $371 in annual property tax, and this isn't the first time a property tax levy has gone before the city council. They've approved similar hikes every year since 2006.
We've owned our home for about a year. We've already seen one increase. I don't remember how big it was, but another increase. I mean, it's getting a little high.
The city says the reason for the increase would be due to home values spiking. This increase would be an extra $10 and some change compared to what homeowners pay now. On top of the proposed property tax increase, the city council is also proposing a utility rate boost of 1% to help hire more police officers.
If it's not being used well, or going to something like the police who, you know, need a little bit of extra funding to help do what they got to do, like, I'm okay with that.
But other homeowners argue that everything from gas to groceries are just too expensive.
There's already been a major increase in water. There's been a major increase in electricity. And then so you have to add all that into what you're paying into your house now.
A vote on both the 1% increase in property taxes and utility rates will take place November 18th.
And right now, Bitcoin reaching another new high of $87,000 today as President-elect Donald Trump's victory continues to reverberate through markets. The former and future president has morphed into a major proponent of cryptocurrency during his time away from the White House. During his campaign, Trump promised to make the U.S. the, quote, crypto capital of the planet. Many crypto devotees believe Bitcoin is a hedge on the dollar like gold. And the currency is looking unstoppable at the moment, with analysts predicting it will breach the record $100,000 mark before 2025. Red Lobster is making some big changes to try and turn its business around and attract younger customers. The restaurant chain's new millennial CEO announced a new menu today, which brings back old classics like Hush Puppies. The CEO is also working to improve the restaurant's atmosphere. Red Lobster closed many of its locations just this year and went bankrupt, but has now emerged. And we have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in North Carolina, where a veteran-owned business is reopening after being flooded by Helene.
Do it on time.
As a Chief Warrant Officer 3 with 24 years in the Army, you might assume Tim Glantz has seen it all, but nothing could have prepared him for this.
This building's been here 130 years. It's been through 2 500-year floods and a bunch of others, and the water's never even reached the outside wall, much less, the 3 feet of water we had inside.
Tim got to the store after the floodwaters had receded. Mud was everywhere. The power of the water made a mess of Old Grouch's military surplus.
It was heartbreaking, but it was worse before I got in here because I didn't know, and once I saw it, I had a plan.
A man with a plan, and once it was set in motion, nothing was going to stop him.
Balloons around the pole mark the spot where Baltimore's latest homicide victim was shot and killed Saturday night just after 6:30. Pay attention to the top left of your screen. 2 people can be seen walking together seconds later. One man was left dead. Another shot multiple times, taking himself to the hospital.
I was home and my granddaughter was visiting, so that's very unfortunate.
Kiana Hextall lives in the neighborhood where that shooting happened.
And it's scary that, folks have no regard for life. It's just so easy to pull guns out on one another and just start shooting.
I am here for the Jeep Fest. This is my 3rd year coming.
I like to just be able to drive over whatever I want, make my own path, and the Jeeps allow you to do that.
So what it is, young, old, white, black, you can't put any demographic on this group.
I'm just here to celebrate all of our uniqueness.
I'm still finding my personality.
It's not just Jeeps in a parking lot, but they get to do things in their Jeeps. From the time they get up to the time they go to bed, they've got something to do. We built a sand course that's almost 4 blocks long. It's probably the biggest sand course in the country, and it's a very unique automotive group. They kind of mesh well. You can't really put a demographic on them or an age or a number. They just come together and love being around each other.
And coming up on this Veterans Day, what's being done to protect service members against the harmful effects of blast waves that come from certain weapons? We'll be right back. Our veterans have defended our country and protected us from harm, but many of them have been harmed by the weapons they used to defend us. On this Veterans Day, Spotlight on America's Dwayne Pullman investigates the devastating effects of blast waves on their brains and examines what's being done to better protect our troops.
For Todd Strader, service to our country was centered on one weapon, the mortar.
Were you good? I was expert, yeah.
But shockwaves from launching thousands of mortars, Strader says, had a profound impact.
When you fire the gun, it feels like you're getting punched in the face.
That punch can be seen in slow motion when a mortar explodes from the tube. It's called blast over pressure, or BOP, a violent wave of energy that slams into the skulls and through the brains of soldiers.
So every mortar, you're getting your bell rung. Yeah.
The first sign of trouble? Severe headaches.
They would often be debilitating.
Disorientation and anger soon followed, imploding Strader's life long after he was honorably discharged.
Domestic problems, marital problems, financial problems, drinking.
Did you think it was PTSD?
I did.
So did his doctors. But studies like this one from researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology began to emerge, proving repetitive low-level blasts do have neurocognitive effects on mortarmen. Strader started a Facebook page to help countless other warriors understand the weapons they fired could have blasted their brains.
That it's an injury and being aware of it.
That they're wounded.
That they're wounded.
In August, under mounting pressure from Congress, DoD issued new requirements for managing brain health risks for all service members who fire a wide range of weapons. And it established a maximum of 4 pounds per square inch of force on a soldier's body, along with a new series of protocols.
It appears to be a victory, but is it?
It's only going to be a victory if the DoD and the command actually address this issue honestly.
John Retzer, a veteran and Deputy National Legislative Director for Health at Disabled American Veterans, is skeptical about implementing DoD's new guidelines. For instance, Retzer points to page 5 of the new requirements, where DoD sets minimum distances for soldiers standing next to weapons known to exceed 4 psi. But Those minimum distances include 13 feet from the same mortars Strader fired and a distance of 7 feet from 50 caliber guns.
How do you get 7 feet when you're firing the gun?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
And Retzer points out the memo places the final call about what's safe in the hands of commanders. Strader is skeptical too.
It's one thing to say, here's a brand new policy, we got this, we're going to do it, and it's another thing to actually implement it and enforce it.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Dwayne Pullman.
A sinking catamaran was rescued by a cruise ship. Coming up, the video that captures the critical moments and what we're learning about the good fortune that had that ship in a position to help. Stargazers, clear your schedules. A meteor shower is set to peak tonight, and you'll be able to see it almost everywhere. The best time to view the Northern Torrids meteor shower will most likely be after midnight. Now, if you missed the show tonight, you'll still be able to see it through December 2nd. That's according to the American Meteor Society. So that's good news. And also good news, we just got video into our newsroom showing that catamaran that was rescued by a Disney cruise ship over the weekend. A 50-foot catamaran began taking in water about 265 miles off the coast of Bermuda on Sunday afternoon when the Coast Guard put in a call for help to the nearest vessels to save the 4 stranded boaters on board. The Disney Treasure cruise ship at 80 miles away, that was the closest one. And they sure did respond to that call. Once Treasure got close enough, it launched a lifeboat and got all passengers off the sinking craft. The cruise ship did not have its own passengers at the time. It had just been constructed in the Netherlands and was sailing to its new home in Port Canaveral, Florida. Needless to say, she was unexpectedly called into duty. Job well done. And that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.